Final section of this part, current limitations. What is needed for adoption? Bottom line, open public blockchains are in their infancy. As you know, blockchains already existed by the end of the 70s from previous century. Currently, we have open public blockchains, but only for 10 years. So it's best to compare with an infant of 10 years old. So we noted down several limitations. There are, of course, a multitude of limitations currently. Basically, you can compare the current blockchain technology best with the internet technologies of mid-90s. It doesn't work perfectly, it needs to scale, and every time it scales, somebody else invents something and they need to scale again, and then you need etc., right? So we, first of all, need to tackle several problems. An important one, number one, is the blockchain governance. How are you going to govern this scaling? Every time you need to upgrade something, you as an entire community and ecosystem all around the world need to reach consensus. Normally there was a trusted third party, now you don't have a trusted coordinating party, so you need to do this on your own. Blockchain governance is a very important one because it determines and sets the route. How do we go from here? Do we go for scaling to a more centralized version, or do we go to a more secure version? Do we go for speed? It all depends on your opinion, of course. What is it going to use for? Keep that in mind. What is our final use case? And things get quite heated as well, as we see on in following courses. Different people, different opinions in this regard. Hence, the arrangement of governance is quite the issue, and especially basically worthy of an entirely different course, which we will eventually make for you, of course, called blockchain governance. So the second one is the lack of developers in the community, because we need more developers. We need more people to basically build these blockchains and infrastructures. And of course, a lot of people are migrating towards these new technologies, and a lot of good developers are already building every day in and day out. But to reach full global adoption, we need more people. And more importantly, we need more multidisciplinary people. Currently, for example, if you check statistics on Bitcoin searches, 90% is over male. So we need more females. Also, we need all kinds of ages. You see a certain age. Most of the, I think I am with my average age, well, let me rephrase that. The current average age is approximately between 25 and 40-ish. So we need younger and older people. We need a more balanced developing ecosystem. We can learn from each other, we can learn from different opinions, and we want to prevent something like Google happened to Google once, that it got racist, that it got biased. We want to eliminate the bias as much as possible. And how do we do that? By including way more people. And this is also one of the main reasons why we offer these courses for free. We want to make digital technologies accessible for anyone and everywhere. Equal chances, whether you are African, Asian, European, American, whether you're male, female, no matter who you are, wherever you are, we want to offer you a chance. Hence, of course, the multidisciplinary complexity, which we try to tackle with these huge amounts of courses that we're going to make for you. Eventually, bottom line here is try to find your ikigai, try to find your specialism where you can contribute to this ecosystem, and try to find where your energy lies and go to that direction. Of course, mentioned once before, don't neglect the other disciplines, because you can learn a lot of things when you are, for example, a developer. Don't forget to look at the economic incentives. If you are an economist, don't neglect the IT component. You catch me, right? You catch my drift. Tribalism also relates to the governance. Tribalism, what I mean with that is that everybody seems to be focused on their blockchain, and their blockchain is the best, and all the other blockchains are scams. Also known as, for example, a Bitcoin maximalism or Bitcoin extremism, or Bitcoin Cash versus Bitcoin Core, or Ethereum versus Ethereum Classic. Tribalism makes you wear one direction eyeglasses, which can make it quite difficult to keep an open mind to other opportunities than your current team. Now, let's go to the scams and to the hacks. Of course, criminals use this technology as well. And I don't think this should be called a limitation. This is actually a proof that it works, because criminals are on the very forefront of risk and reward, and they need to know that they can trust the technology when they use one. The very first shoes were used by criminals as well as the very first cars to get away from the bank robbery. New technologies offer new possibilities, and criminals are most often the first one grabbing those possibilities. Hence, of course, our solution, education. By educating you, we try to offer you a tool set which you can prevent from getting scammed. And for example, buying stuff that's totally worthless, because you can now actually make an estimated guess on your own. Is this worth something? Do these claims hold based on their white paper? Do I understand what they're saying? Can they indeed scale decentralized in a secure manner? Or is it just a hoax, deliberately or undeliberately? People can also actually think that they can build it, but don't understand the very basics, which can be perhaps even more dangerous. Hence also the scaling limitations. How are we going to scale? Are we going to scale on layer 1 on the blockchain itself? Are we going to build an infrastructure around it? Layer 2. Are we going to make them interoperable? So the connection between blockchains. Are we going to make bigger blocks? Very, very, very interesting stuff. Also, like all the other things, worth an entire section on its own. So I'm going fast, and I'm going fast here for a reason. We're going to describe all these topics later on. Forgot to mention that. We're going to describe them all in separate sections. While I explain these topics, I always keep my lovely mom in the back of my mind. If I can actually explain it to her as a tech-savvy person or a not-so-tech-savvy person, I think I can relate to the general population, at least in the Netherlands. So what currently the technique is way too techy. She has no idea what I'm talking about. She doesn't even care. She just wants to know how can I use it. I always like the example. Try to send an email in the beginning of the 90s and try to compare it with how easy it is nowadays. My mother used email. My mother uses WhatsApp. My mother uses the internet. She couldn't have used the internet 20 years ago. Just as she can't use blockchain technology, she most likely will be able to use it within 10 or 15 years. This means that it needs to get more user-friendly. And a lot of good applications are working on it. A lot of good developer teams are actually working their way towards that user-friendliness. But of course, this time you are responsible for your own data, which makes, of course, your responsibility makes it increase as well. Discussions about monetary policy, I think we've said enough in that regard. Monetary policy, inflation, deflation, gold versus non-backed digital ledger money. I think we can skip this part. People actually start bashing their head of each other. Sorry, long list. Legal framework, very, very important and always often underestimated. To get adopted in certain regions, you need to have a certain legal framework. That's what we always used to think. But now, for the very first time, we are talking about a global framework. A global legal framework, because this is not a technique that you can catch in one certain region. It is a global distributed ledger. So this actually means that for the first time in human history, you might, if you want to legalize something like this, and if you want to regulate it, you have two options. You either need to get all the entire countries set in all one legal framework, which of course isn't going to happen. And if that's going to happen, I think people should focus on some more pressing matters on hand, like for example the increase in climate, sustainability, poverty, stuff like that, and not a decentralized peer-to-peer payment system, which is going to be the next economical infrastructure, of course, on the side note. Bottom line is you can't tackle this. It's a global technology that needs a global legal framework. Of course, if you want to fully adopt it in a country, in a region, there the legal framework most definitely kicks in and can actually help spur this innovation or can delay it. But more than delay it, I don't think you actually can, because there will be some country or some technique that pops up and it figures out a way around. So I'm really curious in this regard how we're going to tackle it. Of course, there is going to be a legal deep dive in this blockchain course as well. Energy consumption, I don't think we've properly discussed this in this session, and we will do so in further sessions as well. Basically, the energy used in a block is also the security of that block. So the more energy you put in a block, the more a secure the block is. So it isn't wasteful unless you don't use this block or the transactions in that block properly. So it all depends on, do you think that the use of Bitcoin is wasteful? I think you should ask the people in Venezuela this, or the people in Hong Kong, or any other people that try to escape some totalitarian regime. Sorry for that one. And more importantly, is it wasteful if you look at the opportunities that we actually have regarding the future? I think you know where my money lies. Ownership of keys, 25% by some blockchain analysis estimated are gone forever because people lost their private keys. You can't call the Bitcoin help desk. So a lot of responsibility, a lot of power brings a lot of responsibility, and a lot of responsibility brings a lot of power. Cost from merchant to individuals. Yeah, we've discussed this one already as well. This shift of cost will go from merchant, who currently pay for the payment transaction, to individuals. So because I now pay you as a merchant, I need to pay the mining transaction fee. Of course, this will be lower than the 2 to 3% based on what you're buying. If it's just a croissant of $1, then it's more. But as soon as you start paying more than 10 to 15% / 2 to 3% of a transaction, so in this case it would be $5 or so, then it's the other way around. So there's a shift there. It will be less customer friendly, but prices will drop because the owner, the merchant, has less cost. Hence, of course, it will be more user friendly. Depends, once again, based on the fee and based on the amount of that you're buying. User-friendly adoption, we discussed this. Scalability is double in it again. Sorry for that one. I will delete them in the final slide. Oracle problems. That's a cool one. Oracle problems we will discuss next one. I will keep you hyped. I will keep you pumped. We're going to discuss this one in next session, smart contracts, where I will discuss what an Oracle is and what the problem is and how they relate to smart contracts. For now, we will just go, you know what, we will go to smart contracts. I think we are there. I think we are ready. And I am tremendously looking forward to that. See you there.